Good afternoon, everyone. It's David Schlotthauer here, back with another detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion for Sunday, August the 18th, 2024. So here's a look at the latest GOES 16 True Color Visible Satellite Imagery provided by Dr. Levi Cowan at tropicaltidbits.com. And we can see with what we have here, we have Tropical Storm Ernesto with winds of 70 miles an hour. It's going to probably be upgraded back to a hurricane with 75-mile-an-hour winds because at the last few images, you can make out that eye-like future. Very hard to make out here, but you can see there is indeed an eye there. But otherwise, much of the deep tropics here looking nice and clear. Not even any convection over here in the Caribbean or the western main development region. We do have a lot of thunderstorms, and a lot of you are going to be talking a lot about this, that, whoa, there's a lot of deep convection out there. We're going to see a tropical depression or a storm in the next 2 or 3 days. The answer is no, we are not. The tropics are going to remain fairly quiet for at least the next 1 or 2 weeks. Here's a quick look at Tropical Storm Hurricane Ernesto for this afternoon, and we could see there, again, that little eye-like future starting to pop out again on the visible satellite imagery, so it won't be surprising to me if the National Hurricane Center goes ahead and upgrades this back to a hurricane. Looking at the 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center, there is the 70-mile-an-hour Tropical Storm Ernesto to become a hurricane probably in the next advisory. Nothing to watch out here at all in the main development region, which is good news for our folks that live in the Windward, Leeward, Greater, Lesser Antilles. Nothing to be concerned about, even if you're in Jamaica. Looking good for the time being because the tropics are looking good with very little deep convection. A lot of drier air out here in the Caribbean, which is good news for right now. So now let's take a look at the latest global computer models forecasting the tropics for you all that are wondering. This whole slumber party, other than Ernesto that we're seeing out there, there's no additional systems coming, and I will show you why here, not just from the deterministic forecast, but also from our ensembles that are continuing to indicate that the signal out there is not looking very prominent for tropical cyclone genesis to unfold by late August like what we were thinking originally. So here's a look at the latest GFS model. This is the 850 millibar geopotential height. This is for this afternoon, and you can see there is Ernesto, our last named storm in this active cycle that we just got done going through with Debbie and Ernesto, and looking quiet after that. And we can see why that is. Once that departs, this ridge is going to build in, and that means what? More drier air coming off of Africa, more wind shear in the upper levels of the atmosphere, and I'll show you the shear forecast here in a second. But the background state, not as favorable as what we would like to see it for late August. This is a little impressive, but pretty typical for this time of the year. There is a little bit of vorticity and some energy down here. That's the color shading that you're seeing, but nothing coming together at all on the GFS model over the next 5 days. I want to make it clear, 5 days, there is nothing out there. Some YouTubers might say otherwise, but in my case, I am not going to say that there's going to be anything developing in this time frame. Going out to about 7 days. So this is the 7-day right here for Sunday morning, August the 25th. Still nothing out there. So again, the GFS looking pretty calm and quiet for right now with nothing to develop. Now, once we get beyond the 10-day forecast, we are going to start seeing more tropical wave development here, but there, again, is still no initiation. There is still no indications to me that these waves will come together, at least for right now. Now, the GFS does have issues. It's on a weak bias right now, and we will look at the Euro to compare to that. That's why we're going to use 2 models here. But based on what I'm seeing, this has been very consistent among the past several GFS model runs, all the way going back to nearly about 5 or 6 days ago. We've been looking at this and still looking quiet out here. All right, and this is August 28th, by the way. So this is towards the end of August, and by the time we go into even the 1st of September, still nothing out there, and we all are shaking our heads here and biting our nails and doing whatever we need, or maybe kind of scratching our head like, where is the hyperactive season at? Well, like, you probably are asking me that. The simple answer to that is, well, just because we have very warm sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic and a favorable oceanic setup does not guarantee we're going to have a hyperactive season, right? Now, we originally thought that at first because, you know, when you look at analogs, you have to believe the analogs and kind of extrapolate it like that. But now that we're getting into the meat of hurricane season, now we're going to kind of start scratching our head, probably just kind of biting our nails, like, where in the heck why is the Atlantic going into a slumber? What I think is because these waves are coming off at a much northern latitude. This is not what you want. You want tropical waves to come off at this latitude, kind of coming off from here. Instead, they're doing this. They're coming off much higher, and they're running into this drier air. There's a lot of wind shear up here this go around, and that's why these waves are not able to develop very well at all. And going all the way out to the 3rd of September on the deterministic forecast, still indicating that there will not be any tropical development, which is pretty astounding to see on the GFS model. We'll see if that comes true or not. Looking at our wind shear forecast, this is one of the reasons why we still have too much wind shear out here over Africa and over the central Atlantic. And going forward here, you can see the wind shear does pick up, notably actually, with shear values anywhere between 20 to 30 knots. Even up here, we have shear that is fairly strong where these waves are coming off of, especially south right here. So this is, fortunately, for a lot of people that don't like an active season, this is for you. All this shear and dry air is looking to set up shop again over the Atlantic, and we can see that here. Lots of drier air here. There's a tongue here. If we go back in time, there's just too much of it. And that's probably one of the inhibitors that is allowing the tropics to stay fairly quiet. More Saharan dust. I mean, it was off to a late start. And what I think is going on is everything is off to a late start. I remember that our Saharan dust really didn't get going until literally late July or late June into early July. Actually, wait, no. It was right after Beryl happened when we got all the Saharan dust. So everything is pretty much behind schedule, I feel like, and the pattern is just not well established at the moment. Here's a look at the European model, and we can see, again, a similar outcome. This is the vorticity plot, not showing anything in the next 5 days. And then you can see here in the next, say, 8 to 10 days, just nothing out there all the way through the 28th of August. And if that's not enough evidence, here's a look at the Canadian model. Still nothing out there. And if that's not enough, we will even take it a lot further than that to the Icon model, showing nothing either. I mean, here is a tropical wave, but again, because of the lackluster of this ridge up here to the north, this is probably going to turn northward and fizzle out. So the background state not setting up yet, I don't think, and it doesn't look like it's going to set up maybe until early September now. I mean, we should start seeing activity in late August, but it looks like it's going to hold off now. It looks like into early September. And this is why, so we're looking at our European Ensemble Prediction System cyclone locations. Now, we're doing something a little bit different in this video. We're actually going to look back in time of the initialization of these ensembles. So if you're wondering what this all is, this is actually Ernesto. So remember when Ernesto was down here, this was on the morning of August the 13th. So we're going to be looking at our signal out here on how that justifies on what we're seeing right now. So, as you know, it is very risky, and I'm going to say this from my heart, and I want to feed you guys the honest, reliable information in these videos that I present you all with as often as I can. That you might see other YouTubers out there. I'm not going to say who. I don't want to get called out. I felt like I dug a little deep with calling out a couple of YouTubers before, but I want to make it clear here, the models do not do a good job beyond 10 days. That's just my personal experience. You don't have to agree with me. You can disagree with me. We all have our own opinions on this. But if we look at our ensemble model consensus and signal out here, this was the same time that I'm about to show you currently here. And this is for August the 28th. This is what the signal looked like. Now let's go to the initialization on August the 14th of that morning. We can see still not much of a signal. And then we can see, again, we're looking, and again, this was 15 days out at this starting point of August the 13th. Now let's go to 13 days out when this was initialized on the 15th of August. Again, lackluster signal out here, just not much. And look at this. More recently, this is 12 days out. This is this was initialized nearly a couple of days ago. So this was initialized on Friday morning, August the 16th. And look at the signal out here. Just not much at all. And then when we look out further and further in time, look at that signal really decreasing. Ooh, wow. Why did I get my highlighter out? So you can see only 2 members show something in about 10 days becoming a tropical storm at the very most. Here is Ernesto up here leaving the scene, but you can just see, all right, if we go back to the very first one, we thought, oh, there's a better signal out there. We might have to watch that, but look at what all happens is the signal really decreases. So what I'm trying to tell you all here is that because of climatology, we know what's coming, all right? The peak of hurricane season is in early to mid-September. So these models, these ensembles are going to base off of climatology, the oceanic conditions, and try to develop random systems that have not even developed yet. And that's why we are getting what you're seeing here. It's kind of like this. Well, based on an average forecast, we usually get our first named storm on August the 31st. For an example, we'll just pretend, all right? So let's just say the meat of hurricane season is on the 11th. And based on that, we should start seeing our first few sets of storms in August to develop on the 27th or the 28th of August, if that makes sense. So the model's going to assume that, and this is why we're getting a lot of these tracks, and people are freaking out like, oh my gosh, there's a strong signal out there. All right, I'm not saying there's no signal at all. We will have to watch it, but it's decreasing. So when I look at this, it's like people are going all the way out to 15 days on the ensembles and thinking that, well, there's 2 tropical storms or tropical depressions, right? Well, the thing is, this is a very small signal. This is small. And look at where all these tropical waves start off at. Literally 20 to even 25 degrees north in latitude. That is really far north. You can imagine a tropical wave doing this, and then it has to come down here. If it moves southwest, it's pulling in more drier air because the fatter side is on the northwestern side of the direction of travel. So you can kind of get an idea that these systems, too high latitude, they're not going to develop as well. You need systems that develop down here and then they move up, kind of like this, because then they're going to evac more moisture into them versus a drier air, if that makes sense. Okay, so hopefully that clears up the confusion. You're going to see a lot of people on Twitter, on YouTube, on Instagram, however you name it, and say, oh, there's a big signal out here of tropical development. You're going to see images like this from other YouTubers and other people out there. Again, I don't want to cause drama. I'm not here to cause that. I'm here to give you the most reliable, honest information that I have as my experience. All right. So now, what does the 15 days show us? Okay, it does give us a little bit of a signal, but this is a very murky signal, and I would bet you $50 once we go over the next 5 days, does this signal decrease? Does it increase? Do we see more of these purple members, which indicate lower pressure on the legend up here? That is to be determined. That really is. But not liking what I'm seeing on the deterministic, all of the deterministic models, including the ensembles, indicating not much development out there, at least right now, probably through the 29th or even the 30th of August. Probably going to close off August on a fairly quiet note. Now I could be wrong, but the signal here is really minute. Just not, however you would, I'm looking for the word, not really optimistic, if you want to think about it. All right. Now, some people have said, oh, there might be some development in the Gulf. Again, there's not much of a signal for that. There might be tropical development in the Caribbean. There's not much signal for that. There might be tropical development in the main development region. There's not much signal of that right now. Even so, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members out here, just alone out in this region. 5 out of 51 members. That's not a very big chance. And I would really be careful at looking at ensembles beyond 10 days out. We only know what's exactly going to happen within about 3 or 4 days with these tropical systems. And it is just finding a needle in a haystack, and you're predicting you'll find it at this very second, at this very minute. All right. Now we know the signal is there. We have everything in place, but there's just so much dry air up here in higher latitudes. The background or the overall atmospheric Rossby wave breakoff period is not allowing things to develop, and these waves are just, again, higher latitude is not a fanfare of these systems to develop because there's drier air. Think about it. If you start off a system at much higher latitudes, there's a lot of this Saharan dust, a lot of the Saharan air mass, latent air mass that is very dry to begin with, and this goes over the Atlantic. It's just not poised to organize. Versus if you get a system down here, it's likely to wrap up a lot more moisture, and it's able to develop a little more sufficiently, if that makes sense. And the shear that's expected to increase in latter part of August, it has me questioning. It really does. Does this season really awaken from its slumber that we're about to enter? That is, again, to be determined. I'm scratching my head like you all are do, and probably asking the same thing. And my answer is, I think it's because of the high latitude of those systems, the drier air that's involved off of Africa, and some of the shear that we're kind of seeing in the overall background state could be a little bit more conducive than what we're seeing right now. Sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico are really warm. Nevertheless, definitely up there in the upper 80s to lower 90s. So sea surface temperatures are there in the Gulf and in the Caribbean for tropical development. And when we look at the sea surface temperature anomalies, very warm in the Gulf. So that is definitely not me hyping this up at all. This is actually happening with water temperatures 2 to 3 degrees above average. Climatology, this is pretty significant. There's even a little island there of 3 or plus degrees above normal. So definitely a very warm Gulf of Mexico. And maybe down the road, we get more Central American gyre development. And this time, the Gulf is ready to go for business. I did want to show you all the upper ocean heat content really quickly. Excuse me. Not trying to cough in these videos. So that's why you hear me snorking a little bit. That's me trying to prevent myself from coughing. Don't worry, I'm fine. I just have allergies. You know, allergy season's picking back up in the fall here. So looking at the upper ocean heat content, again, very significant amounts of upper ocean heat content in the Caribbean. That is no bueno. That is, without a doubt, definitely favorable. And of course, in the Gulf of Mexico, we're ready to go, ready to rock and roll. It's just about when that favorability gets going. And when we look at the depth of the 80-degree isotherm, oops, not that, right here, we are very deep. All the red colors that you see here in the Caribbean indicate that upper ocean heat content and the depth of the 80-degree isotherm extends very deep down below the skin of the ocean. So that is octane fuel for these systems. If they develop, or when they develop, that is to be determined based on what we're seeing right now. And our guidance looks like this might stay unabated or basically untouched for at least the next 2 weeks for the time being. Now, we could see surprise development, but again, there's no signal right now from the ensembles indicating anything right now. And I just showed you the reasoning behind why I'm underdoing this a little bit. And sometimes it's fine to underdo things because when you think about it, I'm not hyping up. I'm not causing fear to get views, to get clicks or whatnot, right? I'm here to give you the most accurate information, all right? And I do got to be careful with what I say too. I really do. But there again, what I'm seeing is just a lackluster period coming up, I think, despite otherwise the favorable MJO environment over Africa and over the maritime continent, which is over Indonesia and India. All right. Well, anyways, if you did enjoy today's detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion for Sunday, August the 18th, please hit that red subscribe button if you haven't already. You guys are doing really awesome. I want to thank you all for sharing my last video to over 30,000 people that actually found the video very interesting, very helpful. Be sure to share this one too with your family and friends and hit the bell notification icon if you do end up subscribing. But otherwise, I'll be back with you more tomorrow with the tropics. We'll see about that. Otherwise, we might have to start focusing on the United States a little bit more during this lackluster period, other than we have Ernesto out there to contend with. Well, this is going to be a fish storm. Well, it's going to avoid land areas at least for right now. Doesn't look like it's going to hit Canada. But I'll see you back here tomorrow.